right, perfect. So I've got Clay and Matt here. Thank you for joining me today to talk a little bit about your journey with all of the AI tools and what you guys have been building and your experience with BrainGrid. But before we get into that, why don't you guys introduce yourself?
Go ahead, Matt.
All right. Yeah, Matt Bernier. I've been a product manager and a software engineer before that. Actually, Tyler, you and I, we worked together,
Yeah,
back in the before times at Twilio and cross paths there. So it was fun getting, sort of reconnected through BrainGrid. And, more recently, I've been consulting and writing software and really, leveraging AI to, kind of get back into some stuff that I had put down because it wasn't fun anymore. And finding, ways to make like being in code and building things out just a lot more fun because, I can take care of the things that I didn't find as much fun anymore. AI sort of takes care of that for me. So yeah. And so I've been doing that for just over almost a year and a half now.
nice.
Yeah.
Clay?
Yeah. Going on, I think it's gonna be 24 years software developer. Every time I try to hang the hat, it just finds me and comes back on, very much like Mario, Odyssey style. The thing has got a life of its own. But I got into software, funny enough, because I was a Star Trek geek, and I always thought it'd be cool to build an android and artificial intelligence. So one of the very first things I endeavored to do in my teens was build neural networks. So I was in the AI space way before it was cool. And then I got into a myriad of dev agencies, consulting, building, products and guiding companies through, different, all the different tech revolutions we've had, SaaSifying things, the intranet eras, so on and so forth. And here we are, next tidal wave of AI is hip. It's hitting its mainstream, hitting its stride, and all of that old legacy knowledge is now making me feel really old, and also very far behind. I feel both like a gray beard, like I got some wisdom in AI, but then I also feel like I can't keep up with all the hip new tools coming to market, and there's a new tool every day it seems like, and it's been wild. So, and all the things tech, this has been one of the most fast paced that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane the acceleration and what people are able to do now compared to just 18 months ago or even probably 12 months ago is just it's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, so and then Matt and I got introduced through a great mutual friend that connects us back a decade plus. So this last summer, and so we kind of started breaking bread together, and that fast tracked to now we're on a major public company or two that we're working on consulting in AI, and then also our first venture together. So we're very much in the weeds in a very short time span, like 6 months or less. So it's been great.
That's great. So explain is that Unicorn?
Yep, that's Unicorn, and yep. So and then we've got a few too many things to name, too many endeavors, too many irons in the fire, probably, arguably.
Got it, got it. And so tell me a little bit about like what does your developer setup look like today? I know it's changing a lot, but like if you're, you're down coding today, what does that setup look like?
Good, Matt.
Yeah, for me, typically I start in Claude. So like I've scripted quite a bit. So I actually have it set up so I can do like most everything in with a keyboard. And so I've got Raycast set up and I can actually open almost every single project with a quick Raycast script to open up Claude with dangerously skip permissions because I get tired of saying yes to every single thing. Go straight into Claude. I've got agents and skills and all kinds of things set up there. I actually have multiple I actually have a whole repo that I've open sourced that for Claude that has agents and skills set up in it, and then I sim linked my home directory to those. and I've organized like all my agent files and done a bunch of things to just really make it so that every repo I have works and operates exactly the same, and that it doesn't impose on the Git repo itself. It just operates locally. And then when I eventually run out of my 20x max credits for the day or the week, then I switch over to Cursor and I use Cursor. But again, because I have all of this stuff set up, Cursor typically will at least code in a similar way to how Claude will. It's just that the interface is slightly different and it takes a lot more babysitting and work. And I can't, to parallelize, I have to actually like open multiple agents and do a lot of extra work to do that. So I tend to start with Claude because I can get a lot more done.
Got it. What
Mine
about you?
feels, yeah, mine feels a bit like you ever would see like a day trader with like six monitors and like a bunch of tickers going and in little squares of different sizes. I feel
Yeah.
like I'm actually taking advantage of two computers in simultaneous at all times now. I've got one that I'm like babysitting prompts, and Claude and Cursor. So I've got, all my windows snapped to, four up or six up kind of a view. I'm looking at, multiple different. So I'm playing orchestrator to the agents is what I'd
Hmm.
say. In lieu of great orchestration, still haven't seen an amazing product yet that, just does all the orchestration for you and truly lets you, though I've heard a lot of exciting things about Ralph recently. Um, but yeah, so I'm playing orchestrator on one machine, and then on the other, I'm actually doing a lot of either business AI type stuff. Maybe working with Gemini and coming up with the next plan, or maybe doing some road mapping work, PRD type work. And I'm a little bit more hands on with that, or maybe I'm on the visual side with like Stitch. So that's kind of I'd say my attention is really split kind of 60-40, 40% babysitting, 60%, I'm like using the AIs to create faster or plan faster. And that lets me do a little bit more R&D, pick up new tools and try things out comparatively.
And how many agents you guys think you're running at a time?
Five
Uh,
on Cursor
Wow.
constantly and probably three or four on Claude.
yeah, I usually have at least four instances of Claude running at any
Hmm.
time. And then any one of those has 3 to 5 sub agents running, which is why I can burn through my 20x max in a
Yeah,
couple of days. Yeah.
very quickly, definitely.
Yeah.
And are you guys using taking the get work tree approach or something different?
Depends.
Depends. Okay.
Yeah, for me.
Well, same.
So got it. Makes sense. And then how did you guys find BrainGrid?
So that was so I'm in a vibe coding meetup group that has been in Denver for it's probably coming up on a year and a half to a year and a half now. That was started by a buddy, and recently a different friend of mine and I started a South Denver version, and we had our first meetup, and um, a guy named Ryan Estes was there, and I was showing something I was doing with an app, an open source tool called Vibe Kanban, which was completely changing my workflow because I was able to push and pull tasks for a project based on, and each project was tied to a repo, push and pull tasks in there, and it would like spin up a work tree for every task, and I was actually making open source changes to that system in order to get it to do more of what I wanted, and so I was sharing that and some of my workflow stuff. And then Ryan actually ended up, I think, talking to you, Tyler,
Yeah,
to you and
I was on his
Nico.
podcast.
Yeah, and so Ryan was like, "Hey, you guys should talk." And Tyler, you were like, "We worked with Matt at Twilio," and
Yeah.
so then we got back together and started talking. And actually, on that phone call that we were talking, Tyler, I shut down all of my Vibe Kanban instances, signed up for BrainGrid, and started using it while we were talking because it was solving all of the things that I was running into problems with Vibe Kanban at the time. And the agent that you guys had written into BrainGrid had started answering problems even like with just what I was playing with, I was just testing it out and just goofing around with it in the like a free, I don't know, you guys gave like a free 7 days or something, and
Yeah,
then
the trial. Yep.
yeah, and it was asking me questions, and I was like, "Yep, I'm in," and signed up right there because it just made so much more sense for me.
Very
Yeah,
cool. No.
and I heard about it from Matt, and it's funny because prior to that, him and I had never even had a conversation about it. But I had tried to help my other partner, Mark, find a good. There's like Chat PRD,
Yeah.
out there, and others. We had literally tried going out because he was getting some FOMO. I've been using agentic, solutions for a while now, and he's seen this evolution in the dev front. And he's like, I want this for product, and he knows a little bit of code, but he's like, but it just doesn't really work. And everything we tried, like Chat PRD and others, like was too literal on the product side and didn't bridge the gap between product and engineering. And so it still created almost similar amount of work. It's like it almost wasn't useful to just have a an AI system out there creating 200 items in a backlog for me. It's like, no, I need a thorough feature with both the product user stories and the technical specs. And it just felt like every tool we tried to glue together did one or the other, but didn't really do both, and the glue didn't really work. So it was really easy. I mean, I've tried so many different tools, and I know how to like pass or fail them now in minutes. And so when I got on BrainGrid and I did a first user story in there, I knew in the very first one, I knew the questions
Yeah.
it asked me before I even saw
Yeah.
the output. Just that I was like, wow, those are the exact right questions to be prompted and asked. So I knew your orchestration backend, whatever your magic you were doing, you were either pairing up and making two agents kind of talk to each other or argue. I've done something similar in code. Again, where I've played orchestrator and I've had Claude argue with Gemini and say, okay, poke holes in this,
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
plan, and that's where you get the best results. And so I felt like I was seeing the results of some type of magic like that, where it seemed like you had coupled up something clever on that front. And so yeah, and then we've been using it religiously ever since. I'd be curious to know what our usage looks like on the back end through your lens, because I feel like especially that first couple of weeks we were living and breathing Brain Grid so aggressively to
Mhm.
catch up on a couple projects. So
You guys were definitely the top of the leaderboard in terms of, I think, total requirements created, and then just total token usage, by a pretty large margin. I mean, when you guys dove in, we we were watching that token usage like exponentially rise. So it was very cool to see, and we obviously got to learn a ton, and hopefully have been in there fixing little things we'd watch you guys bump into, and just trying to make that thing better as often as we
Yeah.
could.
yeah, you guys were on
Well,
it. I mean, I know from our end, I can speak to strongly to the fact that I would say we were weeks, maybe arguably months behind on a few things. And I mean, we knocked out over 200 um, feature backlog items. And these are not small features. I mean, these would be day to 3 day features each, and so 200 features of that size, I mean, it's just incredible. We were knocking things out so fast. I mean, here we are, we're now mostly caught up on, again, a very daunting, especially a two-person, Matt and I really leading a lot of this dev, and two-person team leading most of this. Holy cow, it was an incredible feeling. So yeah, we feel very appreciative of the generosity given to the token
yeah.
usage. And I know we were exhausted. Hopefully, we're kind of more nominal and we plateau a bit now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like to put it into perspective, since what, October, beginning of October, I think is when we got on.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. We have built a platform system and an OAuth application on top of that platform that we've taken the platform live, and we are taking the OAuth application to investors soon. Um, and we estimated that between the two projects, it's probably would have taken a team of, I don't know, Clay, 10 devs, 4 or 5 years to build that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And not only that, but not just us as engineers, but we got to put our product owner and CPO in BrainGrid directly too. And since he
Yeah.
knows a little bit of code too, it's like it was great because when we're taking his QA feedback and his, new stories, new features that he wanted to just kind of triage and just document somewhere, he was able to do so without like tapping on our shoulder. We're just like,
Hmm.
hey, go put it in here. And so it was useful to non-engineers as well. Where then our other partner, who's more of a marketing growth side, was like, "Wait, I'm got FOMO. I want to do that. I want to build the
Yeah.
backlog." So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah,
And
great.
then,
I
yeah.
think that was Mark, right? Because
Yeah.
he
Yep.
was. It looked like you guys were converting over some very detailed workflows, or something like that. Because he was taking screen grabs of something and basically giving it to BrainGrid and be like, make this work. Figure out how to build this or something like that. And our file attachments, I was struggling with that a little bit of how to get those into the models correctly. And Mark could get up and try something. I'm like, yeah, yeah, it works. We're good. He'd get up and try. And he's like, ah, you're almost there, not quite. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Leave it to a
He's
product owner. He'll
yeah.
tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's worked in, big publicly traded companies with teams of 20 engineers, And so he's used to working remotely and he knows like get a screenshot, write down the steps to reproduce it, all of that. And so he was giving us great, bug reports and everything with full screenshots, and we had a little setup in Slack. And so he was actually moving that stuff from what we had done in Slack over into BrainGrid. And so what you were seeing were his bug reports.
Ah, okay.
And yeah, and they were in these like complicated user onboarding flows in that platform that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so they were three, four steps down into that onboarding flow. Here's the screenshot of what's happening. This is how I got there, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, and what was cool was seeing, BrainGrid like, yep, I see exactly what you're doing. I see what's going on. And, being able to figure that out without having to us to just sit there and like explain all the context and all of that just saves us so much time.
Yeah, and the other thing I noticed with Mark doing that, so normally the way it was being done was just, again, just it'd be dumped in Slack or be dumped in a kind of QA backlog. And as a human, you'd have to go in and just, digest and ingest that for, 10 minutes, per, so you're losing 10 minutes of downtime where I found a workflow where I'm just like, I just have Claude go talk using the Brain Grid CLI and just say, hey, go look for the next thing that you feel like is you don't need the human in the loop.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of got this. I've got a whole. I'm using the stickies app on Mac. I've got so many
Mhm.
stickies with like my prompts. So I just have a prompt in there, throw it at Claude, and again, my multi-grid, layout on my iMac. I'm just like, hey, that one's idle now. Let me go get that agent on something. And I just go tell it to pick something from the backlog that it felt like it knew it understood. And so it helps because Mark didn't. I never had to be involved in so many of those QA, backlog items. Because Brain Grid guided Mark as a product owner through the right questions and answers that I would have needed. So it was pretty much feature complete as a description. Documented, had the detachment, had the context for an agent to just go pick it up. So I didn't even look at half of them ever as a human,
Right.
and
Oh
they were.
wow.
Well, and now with the slash commands that the CLI drops directly into Claude, um, it can be like, hey, go use the CLI and find out which recs are there, and it'll give me a list, and then I just do slash build with the rec number in it, because the slash build has basically the whole prompt in there for like how to use the CLI correctly,
Yeah.
so it makes everything a lot easier because I was doing the same thing. I was like, go pull the rec, make sure you keep the tasks status up to date, make sure you keep the rec up to date, read the whole task, blah, blah, blah. I don't have to do that anymore. It's just slash build rec and I'm done. And it'll just go do it and I don't have to think about it. So
Yeah,
then
we
that's one instance and I just go pull up other instances of Claude and do something else.
Yeah, as soon as we saw the Claude skills come out, I mean, we were building the MCP was the first one to come out, and
Mhm.
we were still trying to think about how we wanted to do our CLI, and what we wanted to look like. And then when skills came out, we realized that it's actually more token efficient to
Mhm.
use the CLI and provide it a skill so that the agent knows how to use it, we sort of dove head, went all in on that. And yes, we still have the MCP, it still gets a ton of usage, but I would say, my preference, even the one that I originally built the MCP as well, I've actually transitioned most of my stuff over to CLI.
Yeah, I haven't used the MCP since you guys gave us the CLI. I actually uninstalled it from
Nah,
Claude. Yeah. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but Opus seems to just consume tokens like crazy, and it's constantly compacting. I got
oh
to
yeah.
figure out what's going on with that. Like it starts at 40% towards compaction, and it's horrible. So sorry, sidebar, but I've been dealing with that recently, where it's like every 20 minutes it wants to do a compact, and it sucks. So
Yeah, if you look at the slash context, you can see a lot of the stuff we've seen if you have too many MCPs in there,
yeah,
because it can't do what's the new one they're bringing out where it's like tool choice,
yeah,
which is supposed to dramatically reduce that. But I try to go pretty light on the MCPs because it sucks up a lot.
yeah. I got to do something because yeah, I've had it where like I did a compact and it's like, oh, by the way, I'm already 40% of the way through. And I'm like, we just compacted. Like, oh, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's like stop it. I need to
yeah,
keep
like,
working. Need to keep
yeah,
working.
I want to not hit my limit by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, please. So, yeah.
So you guys have been building with AI for quite a while and have probably, like you said, used a ton of tools. How is bringing BrainGrid on board like change the way you work?
I would say
So
from
yeah, go ahead, Claire.
I
Go.
would say right from the top, from the way you even start to think about addressing a problem, whether it's a bug fix or it's a new feature, BrainGrid is now instrumental at part of it. It's also, I would say, the most agnostic of the stack I use now. Like, I'm gonna drop Claude the minute the next new hot thing is out that does better than Claude. I'm not loyal to these AI backends, agentic solutions. I'm loyal to the interfaces that help you with planning and are agnostic to kind of the tooling. So it's like I see BrainGrid long term as being kind of a cornerstone and staple to what I'll probably use in my tool chain regularly because it helps with the planning, and I don't see that going away from even if we get into like this great orchestrators, that great orchestrator needs a knowledge base to work from. And so over time, like I'm already ditching the idea of building backlogs in Linear or Jira or anything else and just going right into BrainGrid direct, and having the rest of my team start adopting that as well, because that human in the loop just and sprint planning and all of that you ritualistically you adopt over the years kind of goes away, and isn't as necessary. So
Yeah. As somebody who has been a big proponent, like with big teams, for using like Jira,
Mm.
because it has a place, right? And I know everybody's, on the fuck Jira train, and I'm actually with them on that, but it does have a place and it can be done right. Um, in this world where we're moving quickly, and as a developer, I've always, typically been one of very few developers on the team. And I've never actually like developed with a large group of people. From that side, I've always been a PM with a large group of developers. Um, I can see how something like BrainGrid could actually help when we start bringing more developers on,
Mhm.
because you can say like, hey, when you're pulling the tasks, make sure that you assign them to my user as well, right? And make sure that we're not pulling recs that are already in flight. Make sure that, and so we can actually reduce the conflicts. And we sort of naturally did that. Clay and I sort of naturally picked up tasks that fit our, strengths. And we had certain parts of the project that we already owned, and that's really easy when there's two of you. But when there's five or 10, or you have multiple teams of people that are doing things, and when you're using agents and you're moving so much faster, there's going to be a lot more conflict, and there's going to be a lot more headbutting and land grabbing, and that creates a lot more politics. I think there's an opportunity here with your agents to be able to, say what are the recs that are available to me, and being able to just work those. And I think that's going to be really powerful. looking at it from that perspective. And then, one of the hard things is actually going to be how do you keep up with your dev team?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everybody's just churning out so much now. You spend the time in the planning and then you let those agents turn loose and now you're stuck. Okay, now I got to test all of this stuff and now I got to make sure it's hitting all those acceptance criteria and that it's
Yeah.
doing what it's supposed to do. And it's like, I spend a lot less time on the actual development because I've got multiple agents doing it, but my time is spent, okay, planning everything out. And then, once that corpus of work comes out is now validating all of that.
Mhm.
I haven't found a much better way than, some of the stuff you just have to jump in and do it by hand.
Yeah, and that's actually like, somebody like being in the build mode, switching over to the validate mode can actually be really hard for me, like in my brain to actually make that switch. And I find myself going, oh, I'll just go build more.
Yeah.
But then I build up that mountain of things that I have to then go validate, and I never want to go do it. And so, like, it's really hard to make that switch. And there are things that we can build to do some of the validation, but, you know, we still need to have in the acceptance criteria, in the tasks that we do, and all of that, the steps, the basic steps of build out the unit tests, build out the integration tests, do all of that. But the agents still aren't quite there on that stuff.
Yeah.
And they do, I think part of it is that they were all trained by humans who didn't want to do that stuff. Right? They were trained on code from humans that didn't want to do it. And so you can kind of feel that coming through with the tests that they write and the way that they write it. And, I've had to, fight the fight with AI agents trying to mock every single thing out. And the mocks don't match reality, and the tests are all passing, but the fucking code doesn't work. And it's like, well, I had 5,000 tests and they all passed, but I can't even load the login page. And then the dashboard doesn't work. And then the functionality. And I'm like, well, what the hell is going on? And then I realized, oh, none of the mocks actually match what they're supposed to be mocking. Right. And it's like, oh, okay, I see what happened. All of this training went into this thing and it's doing what it was trained to do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's still like it's magic, but it's also magic created by humans, and so it's not perfect. Um, and so we take all of these steps. It really sort of fulfills what was talked about in I don't know, Tyler, if we ever talked about theory of constraints.
I don't think so.
So there's a guy named Eli Goldratt that created this process, this theory called theory of constraints for the manufacturing industry. And it's actually like if you ever read the book The Phoenix Project, it's what inspired that book.
Okay.
And the idea is basically in a manufacturing process, wherever your bottleneck is, um, the best situation is actually to base your entire manufacturing process on the throughput of your bottleneck. And so you start at your bottleneck and you work outwards because if you don't, what happens is that you end up with a pile of materials at the bottleneck, and then everybody's upset at the bottleneck. But the problem is not the bottleneck, it's that the whole system was built and we never accounted for the bottleneck. And so his thing is figure out where the bottleneck is, work backwards. Because no matter what you do, if you fix a bottleneck, you'll always end up creating a bottleneck somewhere else.
Yeah.
You can't actually solve the bottleneck. And so what we've done now is that we can make planning really easy. We can make development really easy, but where we actually have a bottleneck now is going to be on the QA side where we've always had a bottleneck.
Right. Yeah.
And we're going to actually have even more on the so the quality, but also on the security side.
Yeah.
And there are people that are working on these things, but when we train the AIs on code that was written by people who didn't want to do these things, the bottleneck's not going to be easily solved.
It's just going to propagate. Yeah, that makes a lot
Yeah,
of sense.
yeah.
Very cool.
His books, Eli Goldratt, he writes all of his books in story format. And they're like, it's all about like warehouses and manufacturing and all of that. And they're fascinating. I burned through all of them, like his whole corpus in like 3 or 4 months. Um, and it's about like makeup manufacturing and like all these other things. It's super fascinating, but it applies so much to software and like how you build that stuff. And if you think about the different steps and how they all affect each other, yeah, it's super interesting.
No, it makes a ton of sense. Now it does sound interesting. Um, Question I'd like to throw out there here towards the end is, again, with BrainGrid is you guys have been using it now for a while. What's missing? What's a feature you wish we had that we don't have today?
It's a good question. I feel like I've had this thought. I think I've already submitted them through your like through the app itself. Um, hmm.
So I've got two for you while Clay's thinking.
Okay, yeah,
One is like being able to, by default, to go back to what we were just talking about, have like a base set of testing and validation requirements that are in every set of tasks.
okay,
So, I want to make sure that, we do have acceptance criteria, but part of that is that the agent is actually updating the UI test, the unit test, the integration test for whatever we are changing. So update the existing tests, and if tests don't exist, create the tests and then make sure that they all pass. So that like quality assurance sort of stuff like that is built into the task list.
with the continuous improvement there as well.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. Because we do make sure that the acceptance criteria is there, but
Yep,
we don't always get the update to our testing infrastructure that happens. And so then testing falls behind.
makes
I would add
sense.
to that one, which is like just this idea of like facets, like if you could focus, if we could triage better to say this is a front end, this is a back end, this is a testing, and maybe the prompts had a bit more of that context. Because again, the AI tools we're actually going to implement and use might be different based upon that facet. For example, Gemini does a better job with visual interpretation, so I can give it Figma comps and does better work at front end work because it has a better understanding of my comp itself over what I've seen with Claude and others. And so I use Gemini exclusively for front end work, and Claude for more back end and logic and tests and kind of the catch all for everything else. So I think facets inside of BrainGrid would be great because then I would just visually be able to grep and organize then maybe what I triage and assign to myself, regardless of role, a front end engineer, back end engineer, right? Or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So those tasks could come out with essentially some sort of metadata in there, saying like, hey, this one is front end. You should be running this with Gemini or Codex or however you
Or
map
even if it
that.
just said it was front end and let the
Yeah,
orchestration be handled by the orchestrator, right?
right.
So that like BrainGrid doesn't need to know what agent it was. It just needs to know that it's front end versus back end, a database, right?
Yeah,
Like that sort of a thing. If it just had that metadata in it, so that then the orchestrator doesn't even need to read the tasks to orchestrate it. It reads the metadata and then delegates to the right
dispatches
agent
it from
based
there.
on the metadata. That would be really cool.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, cool,
Um,
guys. I appreciate you taking the time and talking to me today.
yeah.
Been very excited watching you guys churn through the requirements and ship lots of high quality code. And appreciate your being customers and giving us all the feedback. And look forward to continuing the partnership and see where things go in the future.
Yeah, man, we're just so happy that you guys have built what you built and that we get to use it because, like Clay said, it's been a game changer for us. And 10 minutes into our call, like I said, I quit using that other thing and started using BrainGrid because it was just like, yep, this solves the problem. I'm done. And
Perfect.
in that meetup, it was so funny because I was telling people about Vibe Kanban, and they're like, okay, so this is your process. And I said, for today.
Yeah.
And they were like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "I might find a tool tomorrow that totally changes this," and then it happened.
Yeah.
And it was like, "Yeah." So for today, that was the thing, and BrainGrid's one that's stuck around longer than a lot of other tools, and so we're grateful for what you're doing and how responsive you've been and everything you guys have built. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.